We'll be starting the webinar in about 30 seconds. Good afternoon, and welcome to the New Mexico Economic Development Department's slide presentation of Opportunity Zones. My name is Juan Torres, and I will be working through these slides. We will be taking questions via, if you have a question, you can type it in, and we will address all the questions at the end of the webinar. Just as a reminder, this webinar will be recorded and a link will be posted on our website, as well as we will provide the slides and there will be links on the slides for you to access the materials. So today we're going to talk about the program overview and the background of Opportunity Zones. I'm going to talk a little bit about Opportunity Zone Fund investment, the tax benefits associated with investing in Opportunity Zones. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about contiguous tracts as they relate to designated Opportunity Zone tracts, and considerations for Opportunity Zone nominations, which I think is the primary focus of this presentation, our process and role, and how to apply. So the Opportunity Zone program was included in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. It was basically created to try to help drive capital towards rural and low-income urban communities throughout the nation. It provides for a number of tax benefits to investors who choose to invest in Opportunity Zones, and investors are able to reinvest unrealized capital gains into those zones by dedicating the funds for properties in there. And I'll go into more detail later in the slideshow. The governor and other chief executives across the country have 120 days from December 22 to designate 25% of the total number of qualified census tracts in the states as Opportunity Zones. So we'll talk a little bit about the actual Opportunity Zone Fund investment. Criteria, policies, and procedures are approved and certified by the Department of the Treasury's Community Development Finance Institution Fund. They're intended to aggregate private investments and help deploy capital in Opportunity Zones and Opportunity Zone properties. There is a minimum requirement of 90% of those funds that have to be expended within Opportunity Zones. It's envisioned as a market solution for investors to be able to execute projects in rural and low-income communities. There are no limitations to the number of funds that can be created, nor the nature of these investments. This is strictly a private sector project. It encourages pooling of capitals through a fund structure, providing an opportunity for a broad array of investors to get together and look at where their optimum return might be in designated Opportunity Zones. So there are three basic benefits of investing in Opportunity Zones for, again, the Opportunity Zone investors. It provides for a temporary deferral of inclusion in taxable income for capital gains that are reinvested in Opportunity Zones. So an investor has an unrealized capital gain, they put those gains into an Economic Development Opportunity Zone Fund that is certified by the Department of Treasury, and they are able to offset the taxes that they would have paid on those gains. It's a step-up basis starting at 10% and increasing over the period of time, starting 5 years and then 7 and then 10 years for the maximum qualification. And I'll go into that in a little more detail in the next slide. This provides for the maximum investment over 10 years. It provides the investor with the opportunity to permanently exclude from taxable income the gains associated with those investments. So this is a very lucrative tool that will incentivize investors to put their money into these designated opportunity zones. So this slide here represents an investment for an investor. $100 invested in 5 years in an opportunity zone will yield a 5% return, essentially. If that same investment is held for 7 years, that investment goes up to $15, again, utilizing the compounding of interest over time. At the maximum, that $100 investment held for 10 years, invested in an opportunity zone, yields a gain of $44 over the overall investment, and those gains are permanently free of taxes. So again, a very powerful tool to attract investments to these designated tracts. So what are opportunity zones? The U.S. Treasury uses low-income community census tracts as the basis for determining areas eligible for opportunity zone designation. For those of you that are familiar with the New Markets Tax Credits, it's exactly the same designation, the criteria for those zones. And to describe them, they're low-income census tracts, places where individual poverty rates are at least 20%, median family income no greater than 80%. You can access the map to explore eligible communities at this link, as well as on our website at gonm.biz. But we've done all the work for you. So we have compiled a list of all the qualified census tracts in New Mexico, and that number is 249. You can either access that through the link on this slideshow, or you can go to our website and download that compilation. On the same spreadsheet, you'll find, in addition, eligible contiguous tracts that you can consider for designating. And again, I'll go into a little more detail a little bit later in the slideshow. But in a very short period, how can you propose census tracts for opportunity zones? You go to our website, download the qualified census tracts. Again, that's available at gonm.biz. You find the qualified tracts in your county. You prioritize the qualified census tracts based on criteria identified, and I'll talk in more detail in a moment about that. And we ask you to upload your application and identify the county that is submitting those after it's been prioritized. So a little bit about contiguous tracts, because contiguous tracts are a little tricky. So the Treasury Department will allow up to 5% of the total 25% to be designated qualified by contiguous nature. The contiguous tract will be at least a low-income community that's been designated as an opportunity zone. This could be designated by another state or another county. And again, I'll go into a slide that'll explain it in a little more detail. But there are two criteria. One is it must be contiguous to a qualified and designated opportunity zone, and it must have a median family income that does not exceed 125% of the median family income. Once again, we've done most of the legwork for you, so we have identified the contiguous tracts that can potentially be designated in your county. Please note that the governor may only choose 4 contiguous tracts for us here in New Mexico, which is 5% of the total 63, which represents 25% of the eligible census tracts. So here is an example of a contiguous tract potential. We're looking at Socorro, the county of Socorro. And as you can see here, Socorro has 1, 2, 3, 4 qualified census tracts that could potentially be designated as an opportunity zone one tract, the green represents the qualified census tracts, and this area, it might be hard to see, but there are actually 3 tracts in this area that are qualified. So if I wanted to designate, and again, if I look at the 2 tracts that are not qualified, only one of those tracts meets the criteria for less than 125% of the median family income, which is the pink area shown here. Now, if I wanted to choose this pink area tract as my contiguous tract, I would have to designate one of the qualified tracts as an opportunity zone tract, or one of the aligned qualifying tracts around in other counties would have to be designated as opportunity zone tracts. So it's a little complicated for contiguous tracts, but we only have 4 total that the governor will be able to put forth. So these are the things that you have to take into consideration when you are looking at the qualified census tracts in your county and how they relate to a tract that you want to be designated as a qualified opportunity zone. So, opportunity zone nominations. Start off by identifying your key qualified census tracts. Once again, in the spreadsheet that we have provided, carefully prioritize your candidate tracts. You should consider potential investment opportunities within those tracts and think about, have you clearly articulated this in your nomination form? Please be realistic. You're not trying to convince us. You're really trying to actively demonstrate that the tracts have a realistic opportunity for investment over the next 10 years. Are there current active projects listed within the community plans? You want to make sure that those are included in the nomination forms. You want to locate existing infrastructure or geographical advantages in those tracts. How can these help investors to decide to locate projects in these tracts? This could include business parks, access to rail, and other features that make it distinctly advantageous to execute projects. Think about what is achievable in the next 5, 7, or 10 years within those tracts. Have you identified specific areas of potential success? Are there existing projects that are either on the drawing board or in process? And how do those potential projects fit in to future investment opportunities? What are the wealth and job creation potentials to attract investments into the region? Think about the GRT, construction and local suppliers and other aspects that are not just in the tract, but that are in the region that could help support potential investments. And think about, can this designation help address blight to allow for future growth? In and of itself, it would be hard to imagine that investors are going to put a lot of money into a tract simply to address blight, but think about how access to that property, usually it's fallow, could be used in industrial purposes and other types of purposes, and also leverage brownfield funds and other funds that could help in the long-term kind of remediation of those tracts. So our role is simple here. We're working with the governor's office to create a list of recommended opportunity zones by gathering the input from all the county managers and stakeholders. We're asking that everybody work with the county managers to get their list of nominated census tracts through the county manager's office so that we can manage the flow of information easier. But we are very, very much hoping and asking that all county managers work very closely with economic development organizations, county leaders, the Council of Governments, tribal leaders. All interested stakeholders should participate and prioritize the qualified census tracts that they are trying to nominate. The county manager or his or her designee will submit the application and the prioritized list to our website no later than March 21st, 2018. This is a deadline that's pretty much dictated by the federal government, so we are mindful of the short time period. Nonetheless, we would encourage everyone to get the information up as soon as possible. So I don't know that there's a whole lot of value in waiting until March 21st. If you have a limited number of tracts in your county and you've spent the time to prioritize and you feel comfortable, then I would upload those as soon as you're ready. And we are willing to give you feedback if need to between that time. Once we have all of the nominations for designation of opportunity zones from amongst the qualified census tracts, we'll get those to the governor for her review and submission to the Department of the Treasury with a deadline currently at April 20th. Please note that this deadline represents the extension period, which we anticipate will be requested in the near future through the governor's office. We are currently waiting on instructions and directions from the Department of the Treasury on how to execute those extension requests, and we've been told that information is coming soon. So as soon as we have it, we will put that information out there, but please get that out to people as soon as possible. Please also note that the U.S. Department of Treasury will make the final designation of opportunity zone tracts. We provided some sample ideas for what content to submit, and that will be contained within the initial submission form when you download it. And if we have time, I think we're going to go to that, and Joanna Nelson and our economist Ryan will walk us through some of those criteria. So basically, to reiterate, how do you apply? Number one, you access the list of qualified tracts within your county, including contiguous tracts that might be available, either through this link or on our website. You download the collection form from our website, collaborate with your county, tribal, and community leaders to help rank tracts by priority. Complete the collection form by answering the questions and rank the prioritized tracts. Save the document with the title, with your county, go back to the Opportunity Zone application link, and then upload the application. This set of instructions is specifically for the county managers. So again, we will not be accepting any nominations that do not come from the county manager or the county manager's designee. So please be aware of that. In addition, the Economic Development Department will make available our regional representatives to help guide you in your respective counties. On this slide, you'll see a list of our regional representatives. A complete list as well as contact information is available on our website, but you can quickly see that the 6 regions available will have the ability to walk through these steps and help in the prioritization process through our regional representatives. I'm going to turn it over to Joanna Nelson now to talk to us a little bit more about that.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm going to close our presentation quickly and bring up our website just so you can see how to access the information that Juan is talking about. This is our website, gonm.biz, the homepage. So what you're going to do is scroll down, and then under business development, we have here listed opportunity zones. So click that link. And this actual link is embedded in the presentation, so you'll get the direct link. But here we have basically the same information that Juan has just presented with you. You can find some other information pages that give you more detail about the program. But if you scroll down, this is where you will access the collection form and the application. So it is a two-part process. The collection form, this is where you will find your qualified tracts. This is an actual Excel that you download. So you'll figure out your census tracts, and then, so I'll go ahead and click this so you can just see what that looks like. It is a very extensive Excel document that we can answer any questions if you have some. But here's the instructions that Juan mentioned. So please take the time to read these. It does give you a good idea of how to fill out the form. On the second page, this is where you actually, well, these are examples that we've provided you. So you can see that they're broken down by category. So we have overview questions, tract zone level questions. This is where you're identifying if there are particular projects that are listed on existing plans, potential project and development questions, and then a section we're calling rubber hitting the road, where you're describing your future marketing efforts that you and your community will engage in to actually market the project and market investors. So this is form number 2. On the third page, this is where you're actually going to enter your information. So depending on how many qualified census tracts that your community has, your county has, you can have numerous. You might only have 2, you might have 8, so you can enter as many as you have. So once you enter the information in the Excel, you're going to save it as the county name, and then that's where you will upload it to this application, and we'll quickly click on the application. It's a really simple one-page application where you're providing us your contact information, but here is where you will upload that Excel, because that's the crux of the data. That's where we're getting the actual information. And then you're giving us a little bit of background with whom you engaged with, and then you're submitting. So that's the information. Where to, oh, okay. We'll show you where to get the tracks, the actual track. So this was pointed out in that in the presentation, but this is where you're actually figuring out what qualified tracks your county has. So this is a very important document. So as you can see, we have, this is contiguous, that's the second page, but if you go to the first page, we have this alphabetized by county, and you can see the actual tracks. And if you access that, the map from the census, the CDFI, that actually will show you geographically on a map. So if you'd like to view that version, you can do that as well. So with those 2 key things, that enables you to complete the application process. So let's start this again, and I think we'll open it up for questions.
And just so you know, again, the CDFI map is available. You can go directly, but we got all of that information and downloaded it for you so that you don't have to go through that. Once we have all the information, we plan to put it up on a GIS layered map so that everybody will be able to see the final designated zones, where they're located, and so you'll get a good idea of that. Once again, I can't emphasize enough that the contiguous tracks are very, very limited. There's only 4 options, 4 possibilities for contiguous tracks. So if you feel that that's an area you want to concentrate on, that I would spend a good amount of time to make sure that would be a qualified track that would be uploaded. So I don't know if you have any questions loaded up.
The first question is, does the development opportunity need to be a traditional economic base? For example, would an eligible project be a senior nursing home care?
So I'll repeat the question. I don't know if I'll make sure that everybody got that, but does the project need to be an economic base? For instance, the nursing care, is that an option? So all potential projects that will garner a return on investment to an investor are possible. There are no limitations on the types of projects. There are no limitations on the amount of investment. So this is a very market-driven program in that there are no limitations. So mixed-use housing, nursing care, transit, all kinds of projects. But keeping in mind, of course, that these projects have to have a return on investment. They have to produce a set of cash flows to make them attractive to an investor.
Just as a reminder, this is Therese Rivera. This is a federal program. This is not a program that the Economic Development Department is administering. We're kind of just a go-between. We're assisting assisting the governors and just trying to designate and working with you so that you can prioritize the track. But thereafter, this is really where our role, as far as deciding what projects and go into the tracks thereafter, that's where our role will pretty much stop. Of course, we're always going to be there to assist.
And that's a good point, because one of the conversation points that have come up during these discussions with the White House and the Department of the Treasury is that anyone would be free to create these funds. They were encouraging community organizations as well as private entities to go and create funds. One would caution that there were going to be some costs associated with establishing a fund. If you want to look at a model for that, I think the EB-5 foreign investor model is a good example of a fund-based entity. This is essentially from a 3,000-foot view, it's kind of a hybridization of an EB-5 and foreign investor program with a new markets tax credit program. And that's a good way to kind of think about it. Another question.
The next question is, have you asked the regional housing authorities to participate? What about MFA?
So we're asking all entities to participate. Again, I think it's underscoring Therese Rivera's point. This is a very fast-moving program, so we've been reaching out to agencies, entities. We've been reaching out to federal entities, including the USDA and the Economic Development Administration. We're reaching out to all stakeholders. So we encourage all stakeholders to work within the counties that they identify as providing the biggest potential, and we'll be assisting entities going forward up until the time that they submit these nominations.
Well, and this is Barbara Brazil. If I could add to that, when you are thinking about the zones that you would like to submit for consideration, you can think about balancing need with opportunity. These have to be zones where you think there is already investment that can be leveraged by new investment coming in, where there's a need for housing that you've got it in your capital plan, or you've got others that you know are ready to invest, so it's ripe for additional investment. So think about how you can leverage things that are already going on, that you're balancing what you need in your county with where the opportunity might be for additional investment.
That's a good point, Barbara. And I would also look to the potential investors in your region. Obviously, in the oil industries, there are a lot of well-to-do entities that might be sitting on unrealized capital gains, and it might behoove you to try to convince them that this makes sense to set up an opportunity zone fund to execute those projects in your community.
The next question is, will each county be designated only one census tract, or can we submit a few priority tracts?
We would encourage communities to provide as many tracts as they feel have a reasonable investment opportunity, but we would also caution to not spend a lot of time if, again, you'll be able to see right away, the majority of counties will have fairly few number of tracts. So you really want to make sure that you can make the best case for the qualified census tracts in your county, as opposed to trying to make as broad of a case for all of them. So quality versus quantity is the watchword.
Because remember, of the 249, New Mexico can only select 63 plus the 4 contiguous tracts, including the 4 contiguous tracts. So it is really important to prioritize.
Good question.
Next question. When will the state and the partnership provide its pipeline of projects by census tract?
Not really sure to answer that question. I think that it kind of speaks to, based on this new program, you know, should we look at our project pipeline in a different way? Perhaps. And I think we would certainly reach out to the New Mexico partnership to see how realistic that opportunity might be. Again, the timeline for the designation is very, very tight. So I think actually, to turn that question around a little bit, I would say reach out to the New Mexico partnership when you think you have a tract that has a good investment potential, and they might be able to help you make that case on your nomination form.
Next question is, can you explain contiguous tracts again and why that is beneficial?
Sure, and I understand because I only got a full understanding of it earlier today. So let's go back to that slide specifically. So again, using Socorro, the county, and everything I'm saying is just made up. Okay, so let's take that as a given, except for the fact that there are 4 qualified census tracts in Socorro. So let's say that Socorro wants to designate this contiguous tract because they don't see a whole lot of opportunity in any of the 4 other tracts that are located in the county. The white area designates a tract that is not qualified and will not be qualified. So the only opportunity for Socorro, if they want to do a contiguous tract, let's say they've got a rail project on one side of the state, or they have a big development that they've been working on this side of the state, then it makes sense to try to get this as one of the contiguous tracts. The only way that's going to happen is that one of the qualified census tracts gets nominated as an opportunity zone tract and gets accepted as an opportunity zone tract, and the contiguous tract gets nominated as well.
It rides along with it.
It rides along with it. But that means that Socorro would have 2 tracts to its name. Now, the other way you could do it is, let's look at, and I apologize, I don't see what county this is here, but this let's say this county chooses the county to the north of Socorro chooses to designate that tract as a qualified census tract, and they want to nominate that tract for designation. That would allow Socorro to nominate this tract here as a contiguous tract, and it wouldn't require any additional qualified tracts within Socorro. So that's, like I said, it gets a little tricky there because it could ride along from other counties' designations, assuming that those designations make the final designation. And so, you know, if you find that that's the situation you're looking at, then we're more than happy to try to work with you to figure out, to give you advice on what the best course of action in terms of putting together, and that's Torrance, I've been told, so I'm sorry about that, Torrance, but that is Torrance County. So we're more than happy to work with you, but again, keep in mind, out of the 63 potential designated tract that the governor could designate and nominate for designation, only 4 of those can be contiguous tracts. So it's a very high hurdle.
Next question is when will the state let us know what is submitted by the governor to the federal government?
I think once the governor makes the determination for the final selection of the nominated tracts and provides those to the Department of the Treasury, we will make those available so that everyone will see what the governor has submitted to the Department of the Treasury.
Is this PowerPoint presentation available?
For a modest fee. No, I'm just kidding. This is going to be available free of charge on our website at gonm.biz. And here's the link to it. But again, all of the links will be live. So we will put this on our website, as well as we're going to provide a recording of this presentation for you to download as well.
Who is responsible for setting up funds? Are municipalities just responsible for nominating priority tracts?
So the second part of the question is yes, municipalities, economic development organizations, tribal entities, COGS will work together to provide the county managers with a list of potential nominees for upload. The first part of the question is the investors and the fund are responsible, the investors themselves are responsible for setting up the funds. That's not to say that a private entity couldn't set up a fund, but generally speaking, it'll be up to investors and private entities. If a community wants to set up a fund, that's something they can certainly explore. There's no prohibition against that. But generally speaking, it's going to be identifying the qualified census tracts in your county, identifying the potential investment opportunities, and then you could use that to market to these funds. As the program moves along, we'll get a list of funds as they get set up through the Community Development Finance Institution associated with the Department of the Treasury, and we'll post those on our website as well.
Next question, are tribal lands eligible?
So tribal lands are eligible as long as they are in a qualified census tract as identified in the spreadsheet that is downloaded.
Next question is, what is the life of an investment for any particular project?
So as I mentioned at the outset, the overall program calls for a 10-year lifespan for the tract designation. So the longer the investment is made and held in that tract, the greater return on investment. That's not to say that people wouldn't invest in that tract in 5 years. It all depends on their internal rate of return and what kind of rate of return that they're looking for. The bottom line is that if you have a very attractive project and it makes sense to make an investment and recoup that return in 5 years or less, then a project will take that. But once the designation is made by the Department of the Treasury, those designations will remain in place for 10 years through 2026.
Next question is, can the county manager make the city the designee? Make a city the designee?
Yes, the county manager can designate whomever he or she would like to take the lead on helping to coordinate the census tracts in that county for upload. They just have to be identified on the application form so that we know that when that entity uploads that document, they are authorized to do so.
Only take it from one entity.
Yeah, we're only accepting single upload from every county.
Right.
So it's either going to come from the county manager or the county manager's designee, but it's only one entity that we're going to be looking for upload. Obviously, we have to have a way to manage this flow of information, but that's why we're encouraging all stakeholders within a county to work together to make sure that their potential tracts are recognized.
Next question is, I show contiguous tracts in our community in a different map on policymap.com. Is there conflicting data?
So the information that we've derived is from the official U.S. Census Tract map data provided by the Department of the Treasury. We cannot confirm the accuracy of any other maps. So we've provided a link to that directly, and we've downloaded the information that's included in the spreadsheet from the official Department of the Treasury map. Please note that they were using 2011 through 2015 data, so that might be the difference there. Again, we are strictly providing the information as we are getting it from the Department of the Treasury. So there's not going to be, as far as we can tell, an opportunity to try to make a case for an alternative kind of designation based on alternative mapping. The map that we provided is provided by the Department of the Treasury.
Speaking of EB-5 program, are there any limitations on FDI being a portion or all of the funding?
So there are no rules associated with foreign direct investments as it pertains to the program. It strictly speaks about unrecognized capital gains. So if a foreign entity has unrecognized gains earned within the United States for which they're trying to offset tax liabilities, presumably all of those funds have no limitation on being invested in an opportunity zone, a designated opportunity zone.
And this is,
Please note, however, that final rules have not been delivered to any of the states by the Department of Treasury. But based on the best information we have right now, there are no limitations contained within the legislation, and there are no limitations with respect to rules promulgated by the Department of Treasury at this time.
next question is a clickable link presentation available?
So this presentation will be made available, and all the links will be clickable to the extent that you can go through and click on them.
And this is the final question. It's actually a summary question. Please clarify, opportunity zones are simply a way to attract investors so investors can get back money from their own projects? Question mark.
So opportunity zones are a way for investors to be able to utilize unrealized capital gains that they've made in other contexts. And I'm an investor. I made $10 million from investing in Facebook, let's say. I've not cashed in that investment because that comes with a certain amount of tax liability. This program allows me to take that, the difference between what my gains were on that investment, to sell that investment, capture those gains, and then put this, I have 180 days to invest those gains into a qualified opportunity zone fund as designated by the Department of the Treasury. I then have to take 90% of those funds and deploy them in designated opportunity zones. So these are gains that an investor has that he or she is not cashing in because they don't want to pay the taxes on it. If you can take that money, set it into one of these zones, and then redeploy it into a new project within a zone, then you have the opportunity to offset the initial gains and eliminate permanently the future gains associated with that project.
And we had one more question I'm going to read because it's an important one. How will investors learn of this Opportunity Zone program or project, I would say?
So we will endeavor to track the Opportunity Zone Fund process as it moves forward. We'll provide that information on our website as it becomes available, and we will endeavor to track any Opportunity Zone projects that are deployed into designated opportunity zones as they move forward. So within the spreadsheet where you prioritize your zone, we ask you about how you plan to market those projects. And that will give us a sense that we can then report through our website as the program executes and rolls out, whether the projects are moving forward or not. Ultimately, this is a tool for counties to be able to highlight these potential zones, these zones that could have a good potential for investors. And to the extent that we can highlight that information on our website and make that part of our communication with respect to potential projects that are looking at the state, that goes back to the question of the New Mexico Partnership, and we will certainly do that. Once we have all that information, again, we will be putting it on our website, and we will be communicating via e-blast to all stakeholders. So that's all the questions we have. I want to thank you for your time on behalf of the New Mexico Economic Development Department. We will compile the questions as well as other questions that we get in after this webinar, and we will put those on our website under frequently asked questions. We encourage you to continue to communicate with us as the deadline looms so that we can try to address issues as they come up and make others aware of the considerations and questions associated with this program.
If you know that your county manager or leadership from your county or your city are not in the know about this, I highly encourage you to get in touch with them and send them to our website or have them communicate with the regional reps or anyone from the Economic Development Division so that they can become familiar and know that we, pretty much designated them as the entity that would be uploading the priorities. And just a reminder, work with your community leaders to collaborate, work together, and come up with a prioritization that would be helpful for us to provide onto the governor's office.
We have been in communication, and we continue to be in communication with the Association of Counties, as well as the Municipal League, as well as the Council of Governments. Mm-hmm. And we will be making presentations to those groups in the coming weeks, and we'll be more than happy to make ourselves available to make presentations to other entities. But in the meantime, I would encourage you to download the qualified census tracts, to download the nomination form, to start to think about the questions associated with why should I, as an investor, invest my funds in your community, and how can I get the biggest bangs for that buck? And to the extent that we can help you work through that, we are available. Again, our regional representatives are available individually to work through, and we have a general we have a general email address called opportunityzones@state.nm.us, so you can forward any questions to that, and we are all checking that to make sure that it doesn't fall through the cracks. So with that, I want to thank you all very much for your time and your attention. I wish you all good luck in prioritizing the census tracts. I think this program has provides us with a unique opportunity to kind of make a leap into the unknown and potentially get some return for some investments in rural and underserved areas. So again, this is Juan Torres, along with Therese Rivera, Joanna Nelson, Barbara Brazil, Ryan Eustace, Sarah Gutierrez, sorry. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to speaking in the future.